Transport for New South Wales, so there's been various discussions about structures and historical structures and all that kind of stuff. This is the latest one. So we have Transport for New South Wales. I think both screens are working. Yep. Transport for New South Wales, we're reforming Transport New South Wales into a place-based organisation, so multimodal, place-based, customer-focused. So you've got a number of key divisions within the organisation, being Greater Sydney, regional and outer metropolitan, and customer strategy and technology. So as you can see from that, we're looking towards an integrated transport experience, one that is geographically based, and through the customer strategy and technology area, looking at elements in there which span both the Greater Sydney and regional and outer metropolitan areas. So freight, for example, sits within customer strategy and technology. So when we're talking about strategy, we need to think about the full context of our strategy. So we have the marquee strategy being Future Transport 2056, which lays out our vision for transport over the intervening period until 2056. And that strategy is supported by a whole series of plans. Those plans cover a whole range of matters, such as the Freight and Ports Plan, which is a key one that we look after, but we also have plans around road safety, tourism, transport, for example. So there's a comprehensive suite of plans that supports our strategic vision for transport. All these plans are available on our intranet, which you can find under the Future Transport website, futuretransport.nsw.gov.au. So all this material is available there to see. So the plan objectives, if I go to the Freight and Ports Plan, so what we want to see from the network is a network that drives economic growth, increases efficiency, connectivity and access, delivers greater capacity, improves safety and enhances sustainability. So the railway network is not there to serve itself, it's there to serve a greater purpose in the community. So the freight task is increasing, our population is increasing, and therefore we're getting considerably more freight moving through the network, and that will continue to increase. I think we've lost that screen. Right, it will continue to increase. These figures are on our freight hub, so you can see that particularly general freight in the metropolitan area is increasing significantly, as is overall freight. So we've got a growing freight task. A lot of this freight task is import and export driven. So there's freight in and around the state, but there's also import and export freight, which is particularly important. The rail network, I think we've seen a few of these maps already. I one-up them by adding the border railways, which the other ones didn't include, so that's my contribution for that one. So we all understand the network. I think what's also important is that big section running through the centre there now, with the red being the greenfield component of Inland Rail. So, but I'm not really going to say too much about Inland Rail because my colleague here, Tony Fraser, will cover the Inland Rail for you shortly. So in terms of Greater Sydney, so when you're thinking about this context, and I think the introductory remarks were particularly pertinent because they referred to the initial railway to Parramatta being developed by the Sydney Rail Company, really on the back of the ports. And we're no different. We've got a major port at Port Botany. That port sees many containers coming in and out of New South Wales, about 2 million, just over 2 million last year, TEU, 20-foot equivalent units. And that's projected to continue to increase into to the point where it reaches capacity at Port Botany, which we think is about 6 million TEU in the late 2040s. So as the city grows, we've got an intense amount of traffic in terms of import consumer goods, and they need to go somewhere. Largely, they go into the within a 60-kilometre radius of the port, into Western Sydney principally, and there's also an export task. So we get about 2 million in, about 250,000 out at the moment, TEU. So we've got a bit of an imbalance there, so we've got a lot of empties to manage as well, as you can appreciate. Now, we project that's going to continue to cause additional issues with the running of the metropolitan network, as I'm sure everyone appreciates. And what you can see there is the broader vision. So you've got the Western Sydney Freight Corridor, the Outer Sydney Orbital. There's also some other corridors, as in the Lower Hunter Freight Corridor and Malden-Dumbarton, that don't come into there. So there's a comprehensive vision to improve freight connectivity and further separate freight from the intense metropolitan passenger operations. And all that is necessary to enable our regions to function better. So that's why we start at that particular part of the equation. So at the moment, it's really about planning and preserving corridors, and then looking at when is the appropriate time to construct these corridors. So we need to find the tipping point at which these corridors become viable, and we should start their development. So inland rail, which Tony will cover, there's some broad statistics about inland rail. A very large chunk of it is in New South Wales, as you can appreciate, and so you can see there's 13 projects. I think 7 of them are in New South Wales. So it's a pretty significant network and a major, I thought of saying nation building, but then I thought, oh no, maybe not. I've seen too many episodes of Utopia, but it is a really important project, and we're working closely with Inland Rail on that. Other matters which Minister Toole referred to as well this morning are the special activation precincts, so government working to improve the planning of freight precincts and industrial precincts in and around the state. So currently we've got 2. We've got the Parks Special Activation Precinct and the Special Activation Precinct at Bowman at Wagga Wagga. So they're the initial 2, but government has also announced that there will be further special activation precincts announced. So what these precincts do is have particular planning approvals in place. They have special planning instruments which allow you to move quickly to develop infrastructure and to start up businesses within these precincts. And they have like a business concierge and roles like that to assist industry. And they also just generally seek to make it easier for us to exploit key infrastructure like inland rail. So you've got your north, south, east, west, confluence there at Parks. And then Wagga is a very large industrial site as well that we're working with the community down there. The other thing that you need to consider is heavy vehicle operations as well. So the transport task needs to be cognizant of that. There is heavy demand for improved vehicle performance or higher performing vehicles on the system, and we have a corridor strategy for that, which you can also find on the internet. So you can see that we're trying to balance the different modes and looking at where the different modes are most effective in terms of moving freight across the state. In terms of rail productivity, we're looking at rail productivity in terms of regional groupings. So you've got inland rail running through the centre, and then we've got a series of groupings within our regional network where we're putting down a consolidated vision for each corridor, and we're looking at identifying what are the upgrades and what are the configuration changes or improvements that we need on those particular segments in order to get consistent axle loads. Ideally, we'd like to be consistent with inland rail, so we can come on and off inland rail with consistent axle loads. No need to rebuild consists or decant freight in order to reduce axle loads, etc. So we also want to improve headways because we're seeing increased traffic, and part of that is reducing conflicts and getting longer train lengths as well. So we've got areas of the network where we're constrained around crossing loops and the length of crossing loops. So looking at putting together a comprehensive vision for the country rail network. That we're looking to publish early next year, so that's currently under development. It's always interesting when you press the button and nothing happens. All right, let's have a go. Right, so there were a number of references this morning to the Fixing Country program. So the Fixing Country program is a program funded by Restart, what we call Restart. Restart comprises the proceeds from asset recycling that the government has entered into. So that's a fund that's used for various programs. We have two programs, the Fixing Country Roads and Fixing Country Rail. So they're both programs which look at improving freight connectivity. They have a freight focus. All those dots there represent all the projects that we've got underway. So there's a few that have been completed, but you've got a very large number of projects and projects in areas that you wouldn't ordinarily think of, like truck washers, for example. I mean, managing biosecurity and biodiversity and all that sort of stuff is particularly important when we've got trucks traversing long distances throughout the state. So we've got a program of truck washers as well with the local government in that case. So big program, 900 million in total. So it's a fairly serious program. I should point out that all these slides are publicly available, so they're on our website as well as will be provided as part of the slide pack. So there have been a few references this morning to the various projects that we've got underway for Fixing Country Rail in particular. So you can see there we've got, I think Hermidale got a mention this morning, but we've got new sidings, Coonamble South, Hermidale, Temora West, sorry. And then you can see some improvements there, Narromine to Newcastle, the main west loops, which you would have passed if you took the train on the way in here. A main west bidirectional signalling, the Junee to Griffith 25 TAL project, which David Mackney mentioned earlier, which is certainly an important project for us. Temora-Colleen 25 TAL upgrade, and then siding upgrades at a number of locations throughout the network. So the intent here being to realise our vision to get a consistent network, a more efficient, more effective, more connected network. To an extent, the drought almost helps us because it gives us a window of opportunity to get this work done, albeit that it's extremely bad. But when the drought breaks, we want to be in a good position to move the freight that will emerge from regions like this one through the network and to our ports. So there's the New South Wales ports, but there's also product in the Riverina that we need to move to Port of Melbourne as well. So we're looking at connectivity more broadly. Am I pointing it at the wrong? Right, so the Transport for New South Wales, we have a freight hub on our website. So the freight hub has much of the material that I've covered today, all the projects, tells you about the projects, where we're working on it, our strategies. It also has a broad range of freight data. So we've put in the public domain quite a lot of data about how freight moves through the state by local government area, by commodity. So you can look at where freight is moving, councils can look at it, different players in the supply chain can look at it in order to get a feel for what the demand is for freight, what our projections are, and be able to plan accordingly. So we want to get everyone on the same page around what's happening with freight and make sure we're all working towards the same outcomes. There are also some additional material there, like you might not know that we operate a cargo management and coordination centre at Port Botany. So we're looking at cargoes moving in and out of the port, and there's a range of material available from that particular area as well. But, you know, the freight task is, it's not a matter of having less freight. It's really a matter of how we're going to move this freight, because it's really closely linked to the development of our state, and that's projected to continue. So the challenge for all of us is simultaneously working on our networks, upgrading our networks, making sure that the most efficient they can be, so that we can minimise the cost to exporters, minimise import costs, which ultimately results in reduced cost for consumers. So at the end of the day, it's about our farmers and our producers and the consumers, and that's the outcome we're working towards achieving. I've got a couple of minutes. I think I brought it in. We like to bring things in under budget, don't we? Ahead of time and under budget. Okay, thank you very much. Nice point indicator.